Next up, we have a panel discussion. The title is Cybersecurity in the Quantum Age, Breaking Defenses or Reinventing Security. I want to introduce the moderator and panelists. The moderator is Khawaja Asim Ahmad, G7 Cyber Policy and Risk Organization of the UK government, will be moderating. Dr. Rami Shobhaya, who's the CEO of Quantum Dice. Janne Hirvimies, CTO Quantumgate. Professor Dr. Ernesto Damiani, the Dean of Computing and Mathematical Sciences at Khalifa University. And Dr. Simon Patkovic, the Vice President of ID Quantique. So please join me on stage. Hey, voila. We got everybody? Hey, everybody made it for this one. All right. How about a hand for these guys before they start? Take it away.
Thank you, Chris. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this amazing panel discussion on cybersecurity in the quantum era, which is a very pertinent topic of today. As you can appreciate, there are rapid advancements in quantum, which is also bringing unprecedented risks, but also solutions for us. So in this session, we will address the urgency of quantum-safe security, the impact of AI-driven cyber threats, and the future of digital resilience. The key topics we will cover today broadly are post-quantum cryptography, AI and quantum-powered cyber threats, the future of secure communications, and industry and government readiness. Without further ado, what I would ask the panelists, the esteemed panelists here, first of all, welcome all of you, as I will go around asking the first question, but as you answer the first question, just introduce yourself in your own words. I think that's the most appropriate thing to do. And then we move question 2, question 3 around the table. So welcome once again. So first up, Jan Hirvimies, question 1. How imminent is the threat of quantum-enabled cyber attacks, and what should organizations prioritize today?
Thank you, and good afternoon, everybody. This is a brilliant question. This is a really deep question. The short answer is that it's already, we are already late. Many organizations are already late. What I mean is that we, especially government organizations, are dealing with lots of data, that data validity, data shelf life, we're talking about decades. Typically, by the way, we start thinking about the secret or the confidential data, but also the quantum transition means that the data integrity and the authenticity will also be compromised equally, meaning that we have lots of even public data that, that we want to guarantee and safeguard the integrity of that data. So there's lots of data transition, migration that needs to happen, and this will take time. On the other hand, there are adversaries that are harvesting the data as we speak, waiting the device to be available. Also, because the reason why we are here today is that there's tons of things happening on the quantum side of the world. Lots of innovations, and I truly believe that these innovations are accelerating to each other. So we're not anymore talking about the distant future. It's actually the future is here. And addressing the second part of your great question, what organizations should do? The answer is simple. You need a plan. Everyone needs a strategy. That strategy will lay the foundation of the roadmap and the follow-up steps. This is a multi-year journey. It's not only like we'll wait once the update is ready and then we flip the update and that's it, we're largely done. No, it won't happen. This is maybe the biggest migration that has ever happened in the history of the humankind.
Amazing. Next up, Professor Dr. Ernesto Damiani. Are governments and policymakers prepared for the quantum shift?
Well, I would say no, and the reason why I'm saying no, it's very interesting to try to relate it to what was the answer to the previous question that I just heard. So basically, we have the danger of quantum attacks is a danger that is not of real-time attacks, but is to the long-term confidentiality of information. So long or medium-term, and I would say that, you know, the famous, I will refrain from quoting the famous saying about having a plan, because everybody has a plan until you get punched in the mouth. That was so, and the punch in the mouth is the acceleration of the availability of clean qubits. It is faster than we thought, than I thought. So what are the regulation authorities basically involved in? They are involved in the life cycle of crypto, and the life cycle of crypto is a complex beast. We just at the end of a life cycle of crypto in which we introduced lattice-based cryptography, and it's as recent as a few months ago, the final documents were published. So now, that was done because of the quantum. Yeah, it was mostly done for that. We wanted to find our confidentiality of the data must be based on something for which there is no conceivable quantum algorithm, which is a tall order. The problem is that, of course, the life cycle is long. It's a little bit like making a new drug. It takes a lot of time and public contest and this and that. And we need to come to to terms with the fact that the novelty in the quantum computing will come at a faster pace than we anticipated. Again, this is my opinion. Someone may beg to differ, but it's my opinion. So we need to reconsider the adoption plan of confidentiality technology. And this, the confidentiality and the integrity technology, because confidentiality is one thing, and then there is the attack to integrity through the attack to asymmetric encryption and stuff like that. So these are things that the first time I discussed it was in a panel was many years ago. On the other hand, the rate of innovation in the area has dramatically increased recently. So we need to reconsider the regulatory framework for privacy and confidentiality. We need to reconsider the individual company and organization internal plans. So that was a word that I like to hear. But we must be very dynamic in our planning, because the long-term and medium-term confidentiality and the integrity of the information that we create is basically certainly something that can be targeted by cloud computing and by quantum computing. So this is the problem. Now, at the level of the big organization, at the level, international level, we need to take this into account and come up with provisions. At the level of the individuals, well, individuals must clearly do a risk analysis. And the risk analysis is linked mostly to the potential severity of the damage of medium-term disclosure and medium-term integrity. Maybe your organization don't care. Maybe, fine. In that case, you will have zero severity. What I'm saying is that the probability that within a certain amount of time, certain properties like confidentiality and integrity may not be guaranteed has increased. I'll stop here.
Thank you, Professor Damiani. Very thought-provoking. Dr. Rami Shalbea, how does quantum random number generation, which we know as QRNG, enhance encryption and cybersecurity?
Thank you very much for the question. And yeah, so my name is Rami. I'm the CEO and one of the co-founders of Quantum Dice. First, I'd like to start by thanking Malek and the entire Quantum Innovation Summit team for inviting us and letting us be part of this incredibly important topic. But to address your question, I want to formulate it both in the context of the topic we are covering now and in the broader context of cybersecurity. As many people in the room may know, randomness as a concept, as a mathematical construct, is a very important part of cybersecurity. You can think about it as one of the foundational parts of any cryptographic system. Doesn't matter what kind of cryptographic algorithm you use, whether it's the most simple ancient Caesar cipher to the most modern cryptographic standards that Professor was talking about that were just released a few months ago, they fundamentally rely on the ability to create and use high-quality verifiable randomness. And now you might think that because something is so important and so important for such a long time, that this would be a problem that we have resolved. Unfortunately, that's not the case. As we have seen over the past decades, randomness is a tricky thing to get right. And that's because fundamentally, it's very difficult to tell when something is random or not, just by looking at it or just by analyzing its statistical or mathematical features. In fact, just relying on that analysis on its own has led people down many dangerous paths. And it's one of the things that made the National Institute for Standards and Technology in the US finally release a notice that you should not rely on statistical tests solely to figure out whether something is useful for cryptographic applications. What quantum technologies can afford us is the ability to create randomness that we know is there, that we can fundamentally validate. Now, that's not automatic. Just because you have a quantum system doesn't mean you'll be able to do this. In fact, at Quantum Dice, one of the challenges we faced at the beginning was to develop an architecture to allow us to do this very thing in a continuous and real-time way. And that allows you to create the fundamental bits of encryption that you can then use in whatever kind of cryptographic application that you want. And now looking specifically at post-quantum encryption, the kind of algorithms that are being developed are even more demanding in terms of the amount of entropy that they need and the frequency at which they need it. In fact, the organization in charge of telecommunication standards in the US, ATIS, released a paper a few years ago where they talk specifically about that problem, the challenge of providing reliable entropy for PQC. And they mentioned that without reliable entropy, even the best PQC algorithms will fail against the quantum adversary. And this is specifically the challenge that we are trying to resolve at Quantum Dice. I'm going to bring it to a close here for this question, but if anybody in the audience has any further questions about this topic or want to learn how they can use our technology that's already currently being deployed in the US, in the UK, in East Asia, and hopefully soon this year in space, please come to talk to me or to my colleague Janne, who is with me here today. Yeah, I'll give back the mic to you.
Thank you, Dr. Shalbay. Simon Petkovich, question for you is QKD a silver bullet for cybersecurity, or does it require complementary security layers?
Well, that is a pretty loaded question. and it seems to be written by somebody who's a PQC fan. So there used to be, I call them crusader wars, or like two camps, traditionally, of mathematicians versus physicists. And they went endlessly for the past 10, 15 years around mathematics is a solution to all problems, and the physicists would say, no, mathematics will fail eventually. Physics is the solution to all problems. And these are purist views at the topic, and there's still some very, very passionate people holding that position on both sides. In reality, pragmatic, chief information security officer of a company needs to solve problem, needs to manage risk, needs to look at technological mitigations at a certain cost, at a certain time frame to manage the risk, and makes decision that way, and not really interested in these purist views. So quantum key distribution solves one of many problems that we are facing today with the quantum threat. PQC solves most of these problems in a different way. The certainty, PQC is nimble, software-based, algorithmical replacement of the old algorithms. But then, if you start digging a bit deeper, things become very complex. I don't know how many of you in the room know or heard what Diffie-Hellman protocol is. Anybody heard Diffie-Hellman? Okay, that's really good. So that's the right audience. So in New York, last year, 9 months ago, there was an event where Dr. Whit Diffie, the godfather of public key cryptography and the guy without which we wouldn't have internet as we know it today, was present in the room, and some of the chief engineers of big banks, NIST, NSA, it was just room, closed door, Chatham House rules, and things were discussed, and the positions that were taken were very interesting. I just want to take a minute to share them here. The positions were that chief engineers of the bank said absolutely no chance in their math, in their calculation, they will finish by 2035, that was 2024, so 11 years, migration to post-quantum cryptography, PQC. 11 years is not enough based on what they know. And there are people who know a lot because they've studied this problem on a daily basis now for a few years already. So 11 years is not enough. So that's the first thing they're concerned with. The second thing they're concerned with is this going to be a one-time migration? So based on everything we know and what NIST told us, this is not going to be one-time migration. It's going to be multi-cycle repetitive migration for many reasons. It's going to be dynamic. It's going to be next set of standards and next set of standards. And so the effort you put in over these 10 years, you have to find a way to scale and repeat this effort across apps, across infrastructure, routers, firewalls, and so on. So there's complexity. The third thing he raised there was a fantastic debate with Dr. Diffie, was he raised a concern that for him to manage the risk, he's wondering whether machine learning on quantum computing, which you heard about earlier today, will in fact pose a threat to some of the new algorithms as well, because we do not know what to expect from these new algorithms and where things will go. So his level of confidence that we can have another 40 years of very steady public key cryptography like we used to in the old days from 74 or 76 when Diffie-Hellman protocol was announced till now was a beautiful period of very stable computing. And he says he doesn't believe that we will have the opportunity to have another 40, 50 years of that, and we have to get ready. And so what they call for, there was a really good debate with Dr. Diffie, who said, well, do you think us mathematicians will not have good enough and big enough problems for quantum computer in the future? And he said, no, that's not that. I think you will have absolutely amazing new problems quantum computers won't be able to solve. But he said, I think it's us engineers who will have problems to turn those solutions into really useful, efficient algorithms and code, and it will break things, break protocols, and it will become clumsier in every cycle. So I do have doubts about that. So not about the math, it's about, the practicality of it. And so at the end of the day, what these big banks have been doing, they've been embarking on dual strategy or using both technologies at the same time, PQC and QKD. You have public announcements on that. If you look up dual strategy, you will see some of the top 3 banks who also work with us have already announced that, and they're going ahead with that. And so QRNG was mentioned. QRNG will help you to get a high-quality key. But what do you do with the key? Because 2 parties that are far apart need to have the same key. You have to exchange the key. So the question is, how do you exchange the key knowing that 10, 20, 30 years from now, there will be very powerful computing mechanisms that can break the protocol used for that? And so QKD does show a better level of resiliency against these future attacks. In fact, it is resilient against, depending how you implement it. But to answer fully the question, it cannot function in isolation, because to scale this beyond point to point, to make it a bigger network before the quantum repeaters are available, QKD needs to rely also on the mathematical, algorithmical ways to bridge certain gaps in scaling very large. However, in principle, it's still a much more secure way to do certain things. So it's a certain subset of all of these problems we're trying to solve where it fits. I hope that was helpful.
Thank you very much. I can see it's all building up nicely. So, Jan, question number 2 for you. How can quantum key distribution and other quantum-safe communication protocols reshape cybersecurity?
Oh, that's a good one again. I would say that there are no silver bullet, unfortunately, neither these ones. So ultimately, we need to migrate the existing solutions into, quantum safe, and it actually means that we need to deploy multiple new technologies, update the existing technologies. So it's going to be a combination of of new and old updated ones. We also have invested, billions to existing systems, so we can't just expect that, overnight or within 1 year we can just, replace these investments. So it's very interesting, very complex, practical problem. I know that today we have lots of specialists, scientists, and we tend to look this from a little bit simplified from the scientific or the engineering angle only. But when you deploy the real life, real world, it becomes much more complex.
Thank you. Professor Damiani, can AI be leveraged to counteract quantum-enabled cyber threats, or will it amplify vulnerabilities?
Well, let me say, I just want to take 1 minute before coming to the direct answer to these questions to report a case. One of the reasons why I've chosen an academic career is that you don't get house calls at night, right? So normally they don't call you unless you're a doctor, a medical doctor, they will call you. But if you don't get those calls at night normally. But I got one pretty recently about someone, and I don't want to say who, but someone which is in a big government agency here in the UAE. And he told me, did you hear that the Chinese have broken lattice encryption? And at the basis of this was something that a lot of people in the room know about. It was a paper that was later retracted, and it came out. And you may know that in lattice encryption, the difficult problem you must solve in order to be able to decrypt without the key is basically a set of nonlinear equations. And some of them contain just an error in the equation itself, so that it's like a lie. So if all the equations were stated correctly, it would be easy to resolve the system with the ordinary algebraic technique. If you have the wrong errors injected in some of the equations, it's a very, very difficult problem, which has been proven to be, the hardest type of computational problem. For it, there is no quantum algorithm. This Chinese guy came out saying, well, but maybe, you know what? Maybe this type of problem can be in reality, and I will give you some initial steps toward the quantum algorithm. I heard the noise in the background, the crash of the risk models. The risk models were crashing because, as I said before, we had 20 years to set up something that certainly in no time, it was quite easy to say that it was stable, and for a moment, someone in a big bank, in whatever, they thought maybe it's not stable. And we went through all. So what is nice about quantum key distribution? It is physically proven. It is stable. The risk models based on it are hard and stable as well. So I just wanted to mention this. So now the problem is that artificial intelligence is being used not to solve the problem, for example, to break the encryption, but to make more affordable in terms of qubits the quantum computation that will crack them. This is something that is a topic. We had the Quantum Winter School here at Khalifa University very recently. It was all in optimizing the number and tolerating the low quality of qubits in this type of computation. You don't know, maybe a background based on AI. AI is used for that. So now the question is, will be there a breakthrough in that? If the breakthrough comes tomorrow, I will get another house call for the risk models are collapsing because the adoption of the security layers based on the notion of stability of certain mathematical results. And I'm very happy to be able to, by the way, we have the ID-Quantique quantum key exchange in our university. So, but I'm very happy, although I'm a mathematician, I must say physicists were right. The stability of the mathematical result is something that can not really be estimated. Someone can come up with AI, with whatever, with a way to express the computation in a feasible way tomorrow. So I don't want to scare anyone. But I'm saying that the risk models are under. So that is where AI can play a role. Unfortunately, more on the attacker side, because AI is being used to make the computation, the quantum computation practice more feasible, even without solving the big problem of the perfect qubit. So this is the thing.
Thank you very much. Dr. Shelbaya, which approach holds the most promise for securing critical infrastructure, hardware-based or software-based security solutions?
I feel like you gave me the answer that's going to get me the most haters in this room, no matter what I say. So I think, like the rest of the panelists have mentioned, I don't necessarily think one approach on its own is going to be sufficient. I think both approaches have their specific advantages, as the professor mentioned, and as Dr. Simon mentioned. With QKD, you have a physical proof of security that is quite powerful, but it has its own limitations on the other side. And similarly with PQC, you might have a sort of a more agile way of deploying it, but at the same time, it is not a fundamental proof for security. So I think when it comes time to adoption, and we are seeing this with different organizations, fundamentally what's happening is that they're looking at combining the two. And there are many organizations out there that are specializing in how do you layer security by working on the hardware and on the software, because really both are fundamental to the security of whatever system that you are going to end up protecting. And I think that focusing just on one to the detriment of the other is ultimately a false economy, because you might think that you are saving in one way, but what ultimately is happening is that you're going to be late when it comes time to realize, okay, yeah, I actually needed to do both. But yeah, that's my 2 cents on the topic.
Thank you very much. Simon, what immediate actions should enterprises take to ensure their cybersecurity strategies remain resilient?
Well, speaking about relevant to this topic of quantum safe migration, just narrowing it down to that, because enterprises know already how to handle their cybersecurity day-to-day and long-term strategy. In terms of quantum safe, it's really understanding what is your exposure. There is a very good, I may show it tomorrow during my keynote, please come. There is financials, for instance, have risk scoring mechanism where they look at different assets they have and how risky it is for these assets to get compromised over the next 10 years. So they look at, mortgage contracts, they look at financial payment transactions, and they score them low to high, and they address them in that order. Quantum safe migration is going to be relatively long, tedious process across all the layers, OSI layers of infrastructure. So really the first step is to understand where these assets are, what the levels you have, where the exposure is. There are tools now available. The issue is with how to tackle this problem. It's very resource intensive to tackle it if you want to do it right. I remember when somebody told me that they had 3 years ago, somebody told me they had a really good digital certificate lifecycle management product. They knew everything about their digital certificates. They knew exactly when they cut them, when they were expiring, all of that. It was fantastic. And so they said for every user they knew. And then it's a problem solved for them. And then there was a company that came in and ran deep inspection on digital certificate. Their life cycle management said that on one particular laptop there were 2 digital certificates used, and the deep inspection found 36,000 digital certificates. From the OS, from the different applications, from all kinds of things, some expired, some rogue, which means they only superficially understood or managed the problem. In reality, they did not know all the vectors that were impacting their cybersecurity. And that's true for all enterprises. So you gotta really go systematic, start getting the tools. There are just a couple of tools now emerging in the market that can do this inventory management, discovery and management of your cryptographic assets. It's a completely new field. Tools didn't exist before. I'm lucky that I used to work for a company that built the first tool for that called ICERA in Canada. the first such cryptographic agility tool that goes, scans the network and tells you which server is running which version of algorithm and whatnot. And this is where you start. And then you have to decide how fast you want to move, how big risk you have. Do you want to address your data center to data center? Like, where is the highest likelihood or highest surface of attack, as you call it in risk management? And you address these, and you may do it just like financials do, start with dual strategy. But that's roughly the process. And some enterprises already do it. Some started 2 or 3 years ago, but there is plenty of mainstream organization. They still are not really doing anything, just observing the space. And they may find themselves being behind in a year or two. Once they start this process, they will not finish on time. So they will have to, their boards will have to sign off to absorb a lot of risk.
Thank you very much. Conscious of time as well, at this point, I just have a quick question with the Master of Ceremony. We're almost off time. We originally had 3 questions planned. Should we just wrap up with a final toss now? Okay, all right. So just quickly, final round of thoughts from each guest. 20 seconds each would be highly appreciated, really. Dr. Shelbaya.
So I would say that I think a lot of people think of quantum technologies as something belonging to the future, even if it is to the near future, while in reality, a lot of applications of quantum technologies belong to the past. So as I mentioned, we have already deployed some of our systems in various different applications as well as environments. So I think if you don't have a strategy, if you don't have a plan, now is the time to act, not later.
Thank you. Jan?
Yeah, I'm repeating the same message what Simon already said, that there is awfully quite many organizations who are still, wondering the question, what should we be doing? I would strongly recommend that all the organizations start thinking about the strategy, the plan, executing the inventory. So basically that creates the foundation for the future roadmap, and will answer also the questions what kind of technology you will be needing during the migration and the transition. Thank you.
Thank you. Professor Damiani?
I would like to focus for a second on the active role that quantum can have to make safe, secure communication, computation, sensing, whatever, active role, not just as the toolkit in the hands of the hackers that will, well, they will not be hackers, because if they have 100 qubits ready, and well, it means that they are, but still, we heard quantum entropy generation. This is a resource we cannot live without, because in the Internet of Things scenario where you have so many devices, having the entropy is a prerequisite for running a vast category of security protocols. We heard about quantum key exchange. I want to also talk the extensive field of quantum secure communication. Quantum secure communication is not just quantum key exchange, it's much more than that, and it will eliminate a lot of the risk through physics, a lot of risk of the mathematics. You don't have the crypto, who cares? If you can have inherently secure physical communication. So let's look at the quantum also as a big promise for the security field, not just as what the attackers will do to make our crypto insecure, but also what we can do to make our systems having the properties that we want.
Thank you. Simon?
Yeah, I would say start looking into this timely, do some investigation, do some testing, start doing your inventory in-house. That's really prudent, and then you will be able to understand how long it will take you and in which order you're going to do it. In terms of what's going to happen, which technologies to use all available technologies. Do not be limited to any particular technology. Short term, it's going to be easier to do a lot of things with PQC and use QKD strategically, where you have a very high surface of attack between data centers and build smaller networks to start with. But this will be a really solid defense in depth and dual strategy for you, give you a lot of flexibility how and when to upgrade the network layers above QKD. Long term, I hope to see more investment from large funds and governments into fundamental physics and quantum building blocks to ensure that quantum memory and quantum repeaters, the fundamental building blocks for super large scale pure physics quantum key distribution, becomes reality very soon and very quickly, and then we'll know what the answer is against the quantum threat. Going forward, it's going to be really just doing quantum over satellite and quantum over fiber optical networks, but very, very, very long distance. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Thank you very much. And on that note, just would like to thank all the panelists for their time, and gratitude to Quantum Innovation Summit for this opportunity, for this exciting panel. Thank you very much all for your time as well. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Thank you. Round of applause for it.
Thank you, gentlemen. Yes. Oh, you want to do a photo of the standing in the middle here. What? Yep. Don't go anywhere yet. We're going to capture this moment. Great conversation. Wow.